Welcome, OD professionals, to this week's vlog, where we answer the question, how do I facilitate executive team decision making? The answer to that is not exclusive to executives, but I chose executive as a qualifier because executives are often dealing with decisions that are very significant, where there is a clear right or wrong, or rather better answers than others. And if we don't get it right, it could have substantive impacts on the organization. The short answer to how to facilitate executive team decision-making is to guide them through a choice analysis. That's where we're going to be going and starting with today. Now, why are some decisions difficult? Decisions are difficult for a number of reasons. Reason number one, people come to the decision and they're on separate pages. Oftentimes they already have their pet option, the way that they think they should move forward, and then they spend most of their time trying to argue and move forward the option that they wish, and they haven't yet really clarified what they're deciding, what's most important to them. So they kind of get things out of order. Another reason that decisions are often difficult is that typically no particular option gives you exactly everything that you want. If there was a clear winner that gave us everything we wanted, we wouldn't need to sit down. Everybody would identify it, move on. But some options give us greater, are stronger in one area, but weaker in another. And we haven't differentiated which of those are most important for us. In this example, the one that I will use today as part of this video and then in subsequent videos, we'll talk about buying a new car. But if that is in fact what we're trying to buy, we may want both acceleration and great fuel economy. And those are, even with today's technology, those are somewhat exclusive of one another. Strong in one area, if it's got great acceleration, it's going to suffer fuel economy and vice versa. What we need to know, or what needs to be clarified for the group, is which of those is most important to us relative to the other. Oftentimes teams don't go through that step. Decisions are often poorly done or difficult because we don't have a way to actually then compare and score options relative to another, where the value that each brings is clearly laid out. And finally, decisions are often poorly done or difficult to make because we don't properly bring in downside risk. Every choice has risk associated with it, but too frequently we bring in risk too early, and we let it cut out options that would otherwise be real winners for us, or we don't consider it enough, and we take a choice based on benefit alone. Choice analysis, the process that I'm going to start explaining to you here shortly, helps take care of each of those issues. In the choice statement and the criteria, the team clarifies what it's really trying to decide and what's most important in a way that gets everyone deciding the same thing, if you will. We're using the same framework for the decision. In identifying options and evaluating, we use that criteria. It will clearly point to the ones that give us the greatest value, and then we bring in downside risk. The final choice is one that gives us the best value at levels of risk that we're willing to accept. Now, for the rest of today's video, we're going to focus on the choice statement alone. A good choice statement is imperative. It guides the rest of the analysis. We'll walk through the other steps in future videos. So, moving on with our choice statement. Typically, a little bit about the nature of the choice statement itself. A good choice statement format has an action word, a clear outcome, or what you'll have left over, or rather in your hand, once you've made the choice, what will be the outcome, and any key modifiers. So, for example, as I mentioned, choice statement, buy a new car. Okay, so as you can look through, The action word in this case is buy. The outcome, what we'll have left in our hand when we're done, is a car. Key modifiers are actually, it's going to be a new car, and we're only buying one of them. Now, simple, straightforward, this does satisfy the format that we need for a good choice statement. But is it the right choice statement? And this is where we start to bring in, once we think we've identified the choice that we're trying to make. And by the way I do it is walk to a group, ask them the question up front. Once we're clarified who's doing what, and we've had our pleasantries, we start the day with, okay, so what are we trying to decide? What's most important? What will we have in our hand that we, when we're done with this process? And there may be several ideas. We'll just brainstorm a list. And then we'll come back to them and we're going to do a choice statement critique. Once we think we have a choice statement, we start looking at them one at a time. And the first, we kind of take these in 3 sets of questions. I'm going to read these to you and then we'll work it through. What choices have already been made? Were they consciously made? And what are the implications of the choices that have already been made? So back to our example here, the first question that we use to make sure we have a solid statement is, what choices have already been made? And if you think about it, we could go to each one. Well, we've chosen to buy a car. We're not going to rent it. We're not going to lease it. We're not going to steal a car. We're not going to borrow, and so on and so forth. Those are all choices, right? Secondly, we've decided to buy a new car. It's not, that is one. It's not 2, 3, 4, or more cars. We've decided to buy a new car already, not a used car. And we've decided to buy a car. That's right, we're not buying a bicycle, motorbike, pirogue, camel, etc. Now, oftentimes when our car breaks down, we initially decide, well, we need to buy a new car, which may in fact be a great choice statement and will guide us the rest of it. But realize that in fact, we've made some choices by that. When we put this up here as the starting place, we're going to buy a new car. The question is, if my transportation needs, when I step back and really look at them, are best served by stealing 3 used camels, I'll end up with a car and I won't have gotten actually what I really needed. So stepping back, the questions are, what's already been decided? And did we consciously choose that? Do we understand the implications that are associated with those choices? Now, the next 3 set of questions: how many options can enter the process? Should more options be considered? Should fewer options be considered? Back to our buy a new car. There's only a certain number of correct options that can actually be this. Can actually be a new car. That defines a particular bucket. Now, in our particular one, there's a whole lot of different new cars. Do we want that many? Is that the right number? Do we want more or less? Here's the principle to have in your head. Principle number 1 is you want more than one option. And frankly, if there's only one answer to the particular choice statement that you come up with, buy a 1989 Mustang. Well, you don't need a choice analysis. Just go out and get your Mustang, right? The problem with too few options is that you may not get a good option that will actually meet your needs. The problem with too many options is that, well, yeah, you'll likely find a winner, but it won't be very efficient. It's going to take you a lot of time. So a good choice analysis, one aspect of a good choice statement is that it properly defines the number of options and does so at a reasonable level so that you can pick a winner, but you can do so in a way that's efficient. So, last set of questions is why are we making this choice now? What is the purpose of this choice? And if we got everything implied by the statement, would it meet the fundamental need? Now, this is getting us back to thinking more deeply. Why are we doing what we're doing? What are we actually trying to accomplish? Good friend of mine, in fact, George Lawyer, and I'll touch more on him towards the end of the video, talked about guiding his sister through a choice analysis when she was in New York. And she, in fact, this really was, she wanted to buy a new car. And yet, if you know anything about parking a car in New York, how difficult it is, how expensive it is, and when it was compared with how little she actually needed a car to get around and how infrequently she got out of the city, that by looking at these questions down here, she realized she didn't need a car at all. And again, if you start with a choice statement that says buy a new car, you'll get a car. A poor choice statement will give you the very best of something you don't want or need. So it's imperative that you get the choice statement right. Now, that is getting the choice statement right. As you go through that critique, you'll refine it. You may decide, I don't want a new car, I want a used car, because that's what meets your needs. That allows the proper number of options to get into the selection process and so forth. Once you have a good choice statement, you're off to the races. The next step will be for you to develop your criteria. That's where we'll go in the next video. Now, before I close today, I want to give credit where credit is due. I was doing a presentation at an ASTD meeting in 2007, I believe, in Mississippi, Central Mississippi chapter, and I was doing it on rational process. And there was a gentleman in the front row, a little bit older than me, looked a little bit like C. Everett Koop, if you remember, anybody remembers who that is. But he came up to me afterwards, shook my hand and says, we have something in common. What you were just teaching, I actually developed as part of another company. And his name is George. George quickly became a friend, a mentor, and a business partner for 3 years. And he is the master of choice analysis. He's done it many, many years as part of his troubleshooting logic workshops. So I want to give credit there and thanks and kudos to a mentor. Choice analysis. We will continue this in a future video and move forward as you seek to help executives make really great decisions.